Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolStuffInc.com, mana traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters, just like yourself. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, PowrDragn.
What's up, everybody? And if you don't leave us a nice comment and a review, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. I don't know what else I've done.
Sorry, you're losing
that's
it.
a threat.
That's lost friendship. Reuben Bressler.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's good to be back.
It is lovely to be here once again. Now, if you missed our pre-show, full of all sorts of wonderful topics and crazy Counter-Strike stuff and thoughts on video games and whatever, just check that out. Patrons and subscribers to this channel get access to all that stuff early. We kick it off with our first big in our giveaway. Get your chance at $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com by typing !raffle in the chat. But sub first to get 2 chances. Come on now. Weigh it in your favor and support your favorite streamer with your suggestions at the end of the show to see who we raid tonight. That's thanks to our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every single day. So, it has been an incredible week for Magic the Gathering. Honest to God, this is the biggest week for Magic since they showed us 3 years worth of plans.
Yeah,
I didn't expect to say that anytime in 2023. And yet here we are. And we got to kick it off with, for me, again, this is, people can't believe that I'm even excited about new things with Magic, which I think is silly. But I can't believe personally that we got the announcement that we did when I was learning Magic, 1996, when I was there hanging out and like blinking spirits and stuff and checking out Ice Age and trying to make Homelands do literally anything or whatever it was. At the same time, I'm a comic book kid, all right? I grew up at the comic book shop. I was there every week. I spent all my allowance on my books, and I read a Wizard every single month. We get the brand new Wizard, magazine. Was very excited about that. So that was my jam. And so between being a comic book kid, learning Magic, the idea that I was going to get Marvel characters on Magic the Gathering cards was the piest in the skyest BS. It would never happen in a million years. This crazy fantasy game that a bunch of nerds play. You're never going to be able to play Marvel and whatever. Not to mention Marvel even had problems and almost went bankrupt in the 90s. That's a whole other problem. And even when you came back to Magic, even when we're in modern day, even when we're in, The Walking Dead and whatever, like Street Fighter, I'm like, okay, cool, but you're never going to be able to get Marvel because they already have agreements with different companies who make stuff and board games and all this other crap. They couldn't possibly get the license. Ladies and gentlemen, they got the license to make Marvel cards from Marvel into Magic the Gathering. And this is huge. This is insane. This is crazy. I can't tell you how gigantic what just happened is. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. When I hear stories about trying to get the IP agreements done with any company, the two that come to my mind are, I'm afraid of the WotC lawyers, right? Everybody's afraid of the WotC lawyers. The WotC lawyers are stringent, not even counting the chicanery that happened earlier this year. The WotC lawyers are very protective of their IPs, and we had the OGW stuff, and it's always like you can't tread on the Wizards of the Coast legal department. Sort of like a thing you don't say out loud. Same can be said for the Disney legal team, right? Disney lawyers, if you're the state of Florida, you know all about the Disney lawyers.
Oh yeah, ask Mr. DeSantis about that right now.
Right, exactly. And but he's not first, and he won't be the last. They're very protective. They're a junkyard dog when it comes to their IP. So the fact that Magic the Gathering of Wizards of the Coast, a division of Hasbro, and Disney, or Marvel, a division of Disney, have managed to make a partnership that both parties were amicable in agreeing to. Specifically, by the way, because Marvel Snap is a card game, and Lorcana just came out.
Right.
Like, we are in the middle of Disney Marvel's heyday of card games. So the fact that they could work this IP discussion out into something that they wanted to put out there is kind of shocking.
Sort of, but it feels like those are very different products, right? I would be more looking at something like, does Versus System get to hold their license, right? This could also just be like, hey, if we see Versus System lose their license within the next 2 years, we'll know why, right?
Sure.
Because they have a thing with Magic that's going to last, from what it sounds like, at least 2 years, because it made it sound like it was multiple years worth of sets and some number of products.
Right.
So it's probably not going to be a one and done.
Right. Let's go over the fact that they said they're going to develop collectible products and tentpole sets. That's sets plural. That is more than one. That is not commander decks and we're done. That is collectible products and tentpole sets. The first tentpole Magic set based on Marvel fan favorite characters and epic stories will appear in 2025, which is also the year they've promised Final Fantasy as having a tentpole set in that year. So like that's going to be
Kingdom Hearts.
That's going to be an insane year of products for Magic in 2025.
We're moving into a world where Magic is becoming like Disney in their buying up IPs, not buying up, they're bringing in IPs and going to make multiple things with them.
Right. And that's fantastic. I can't tell you how excited I am to see like epic storylines come to products or sets, like all the different versions. As I mentioned in my tweet talking about it, if you're like, oh, I wonder what characters are going to be in it. Every Marvel Snap card that you have or you can see today will be in these sets. I guarantee it. It's not even a question. There's not even that many Marvel Snap cards. They're going to have to make multiple versions of Iron Man and Spider-Man and stuff like that, which is going to be great. And if anything, I am just... the raw jealousy of the R&D team that get to make the Marvel Magic sets. Man, that's a hell of a task right there.
Here's another thought I had though with that announcement is, are we down to maybe 3 properties left for Universes Beyond?
Not quite.
What do you mean through? What do you mean 3 properties?
I'm figuring
left?
DC Comics.
Yep, DC
will be the eventual,
Star
right?
Wars.
Star Wars and Nintendo.
Yep.
Nintendo is a great one.
I think Nintendo's the last.
And I only say that because we've kind of been escalating, right? And we've done Lord of the Rings, we've done Doctor Who, we've done all the things with nerd crossover at this point that would be A-listers. Minus one from Mrs. Rowling that we're probably not going to do anything with her stuff at this point.
That's not going to happen.
So that's in the box we will never open, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that,
is Star Trek. Is Star Trek. Star Trek is the last one beyond that.
That's true. I guess Star Trek is still a thing.
But I think with this, this announcement to me says it is 1000% a win, not an if we're going to see a Star Wars Magic the Gathering set. It's going to happen. There's a new Star Wars game that comes out early next year. It doesn't look that exciting. No one is excited for it. Star Wars is in a bad way right now anyway, so I don't expect that to be a problem. So
I retract my statement. I just realized this does make Kingdom Hearts a possibility.
Absolutely. 100%.
Because you already are in good with Square.
Mm-hmm.
You're now going to be in good with Disney. You're probably not that far away from being able to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll see how long, Hearthstone continues to exist. Boy, we've come a long way since hashtag that Hearthstone money.
Oh man, Hearthstone, huh?
That game is. I feel.
Well,
bad
they already
for
started
it.
cutting developers a few months ago.
Yeah, if you want to see desperation,
I want to see if we get Magic cards with Illidan on it.
I logged into BattleNet because my buddy said, "Hey, log into BattleNet, check it out." And I was like, "What?" And I logged in, and there was a free gift of 150 boosters in Hearthstone that might still be there for everybody.
150 boosties.
Yeah, just
150.
And
I haven't even fired up BattleNet in 3 years. But I might for 150 boosties.
Exactly. I was like, I'll take the free value, thanks.
Damn.
And it's just silly. And I'm like, man, I just kind of feel bad. And what you find, at least what I found, is that almost every single Hearthstone card does something random. And
that's the problem.
You draft amongst these cards, you select one of these 3 cards, or do whatever, or something goes in your hand, and it's all the time. And so that constant randomness, I think, just ground everybody down to a nub.
The number of times I got mad when it would whatever the thing is where it conjures a card or whatever, and it's just something that doesn't work for your deck, or it kills one of your own cards or whatever. Oh, that was the most frustrating thing.
Yeah.
Swear to God, I really did get 150.
I was just trying to list other IPs that could exist in the fantasy space.
Like World of Warcraft would be a fun.
So it's wild that this is not literally just all we get to talk about during the whole podcast. We have way more than this to go. So we're gonna move on.
We could talk about this for a while. Who cares?
I'm very excited about it. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I'm digging it. Especially as much as I love Marvel Snap. It's gonna be that much more fun to watch the Magic version.
But we'll also talk about it
very clear about
a year.
Yeah.
On this agreement is that it is Marvel Comics and not Marvel Studios.
Right.
Which is much better for Magic than it would be if it were the studio license.
Particularly,
and it was probably also cheaper than the studio license currently, I bet.
Oh, 100%. Well, there's a couple things, right? There's the likenesses and all that issue.
Yep.
B, there's the movie storylines that you would be tied to versus the comics, which have way more. And C, you already have, maybe, we don't know, but I'm guessing they're going to get to use a lot of the OG comic book artwork that already exists, because a lot of it's there and gorgeous and fantastic. And if you don't know, go check out Marvel Snap. They showcase a bunch of
great secret layer options for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like the Midnight Sun stuff that came out to Marvel Snap recently as a secret layer would be amazing.
Of all of the things that the Universes Beyond have done, the only thing that makes more sense than a Marvel crossover to me is the Warhammer crossover.
Right.
Because when I go into a comic book shop to play Magic the Gathering, people are reading comics, playing Warhammer, and playing Magic the Gathering. And that's what's in the store. So this is the same audience. You're going to get to sell Magic cards 10 feet from the comic books depicting those same characters. And I think that's just a win-win for
and
both,
let me be fair.
everybody.
Somewhere between 12 and 15 months from now, I will be as excited as Evan. I'm just not able to get my excitement and energy space up.
Look,
where
I can't even see it on the horizon.
over a year and a half away. Like I just can't.
Having lived with this dream, having grown up, having covered Magic, talked about Magic all these years, and thought about all these things in the past, having like even created my own custom cards based around Captain America or Iron Man or whatever, just like fantasy cards or whatever. Dude, this is a dream, a nerd dream come true. It is wild, and I'm digging it. So
I get it. You have all your love, like all the basic girls that got to get their pumpkin spice lattes every year and get excited. Like I feel you.
That's right.
I feel you.
It's very,
and
very
we'll be that excited. We'll be that excited in 15 months.
Yeah, just wait until then, and I'll really bust a gasket.
Between now and then, I'm just going to look at the news of it like I do corn mazes. You're welcome to be excited about it, but
pop a vein right in my forehead. Now, we move out of the first pick to gather the townsfolk thanks to our sponsor, Mana Traders. They are the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MAGICMICS for 12% off your next subscription with them and tell them that we sent you, and we appreciate their support of the show. So, we're here to the lost caverns of Ixalan, and one of the things I want to talk about to start with, before we get into the cards, is the fact that they put all of the stories out all at once.
Yeah.
I don't know. Dumping is not a good word, but they put all the stories out all at once. And so,
I mean, it was a story dump.
Call it what it is. I mean, but it's weird to me because it seems to be like all these years later, we've been doing this so long. We've seen so many different iterations, so many different ways to do it. And to this day, I feel like we still don't have the right way to showcase the story of the upcoming set. And that just seems so weird to me. This doesn't seem like the right path. You know what I'm saying? This doesn't seem like the final answer. This seems like the current answer.
Here, my thing is, when it comes to story, as Magic players, we're just never happy.
Right.
Like Wizards has tried a bunch of different stuff. They've tried doling it out throughout, the first 2 or 3 weeks of the set. People didn't like that. They wanted it before the set came out, so they tried that, and then people were mad they had to wait on a thing. Now we're putting it out all at once, and people aren't happy with that. And then it's like, well, if you do this way, now we're revealing stuff, and people are mad they didn't get to see the card first. And then we did a bunch of different stuff with whatever reason, Phyrexia, and it was like, oh, well, now we already know who's turning and who's not. And it's like, and then at the end of the day, it's not irrelevant. Like the story is, you still want that to be a thing. It's still part of your IP.
Right.
But is that really what's driving sales? Right. So at some point, it's probably just not worth their hassle to figure it out. I mean, as much as we don't want to say that, but what is that affecting? 10% if that many of the Magic population for all the complaints you get? And it's like, we'll just do whatever we can. We'll try something different every time until we eventually figure out what sticks. Because as long as you're showing sweet cards, that's what's going to dominate the news.
Yeah, and I just to see them try it every which way but loose, and we drink from the fire hose enough just from the cards to try to dump the story on us. You can't really dump a novella on me and expect me to absorb it in the 4 days or whatever, 5 days before you start showing the previews. And I'm like, okay.
But you know what though? I would argue that the people that are in the story are probably going to go read all that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not.
Exactly.
People that are in the story or the cosplayers that want to know about their favorite
but I also
characters or whatever. Yeah, they'll go.
I don't mind them all being I don't think the word dumped is correct. I think that they've essentially released a novella for us. I think that the way that we're going to take a little bit of history lesson on how people used to consume nonfiction. So the novel is called a novel because at the time, that was a brand new way to consume written media. It was a novel way to consume written media, because previous to that, you had to get magazines and short stories and things that were expressly little packages. And so a novel that was large was a brand new way to consume this kind of stuff. And so we are experiencing that through Magic. We've never really had anything like this ever since Fat Packs came with novelizations of the sets. And if you thought I was old before, well, there you go. The first book I read, or the first story I personally read for Magic the Gathering, was the Mercadian Masks novel.
Man, when was the last Fat Pack that came with a book? Was that like 12 years ago at this point?
It must have been longer.
I think it's longer at this point.
15?
Yeah, it might be 15, like 2008, 2007.
But we've sort of gotten that now. We've got an ebook, effectively, to tell us the story of this set, which I think is great.
It's okay. I mean, again, there's some amount of, it costs the money and time and effort to get all this, to make all this happen. And is it worth the time and money and effort versus like vignettes or trying to do the comic thing or doing some short videos or whatever? And again, they've already done basically all of that at one point in time. So it's hard to say what's right and what's wrong. There's story spotlight cards still, I think. Maybe.
Yeah.
Are there still story spotlight cards?
I think there are.
But they don't necessarily tie them into the story because those are previews that they want to put out first with the story. You know what I'm saying? So it seems to fight against itself all the time. And it sucks to me because I think some of the stories are fantastic, but you wouldn't really necessarily know that unless you take the time to dive all the way in. And a lot of people aren't doing that. And that's unfortunate.
So I guess there's two questions you have to ask about the stories for Magic. One is, what is the intended result for Magic when you publish these stories? Is the intended result for them to click on the stories to drive ad revenue? Is it to get you to click on another part of the website? Is it to drive more sales of the cards specifically? What's the goal? And the second question you have to ask is the juice worth the squeeze? Is because we all love the lore and we all acknowledge, at least on a base level, whether you're a Vorthos or not, that some sort of interconnectedness brings value to a Magic set. We aren't just slamming math problems against each other. Right. There's at least some story we're telling with a Magic set. And so depending on the variables and the answers to those questions, perhaps the release of that information could be honed, could be improved. And this is just you only get a chance every once in a while to try a new thing. And this is a new way of them releasing the story. And maybe they'll go, that didn't work. And then they'll go back or they'll try something new.
An interesting idea is I would almost want to see them just make the set and then give a story picking up where the set leaves off. But then we'd have the other issue of people going, well, why can't we have that in a card? Or why wasn't this a whole other set that we could have made? So there would have been a whole other set of arguments. But I think that would be kind of interesting, that we tell part of the story with the cards and then we finish it up in whatever online novels, ebooks, whatever we want to have available, right?
Right. And, it's, water is wet, as Magic players complain. But, the fact that we... I also think the fact that, a lot of the sort of the complaints and the noise is that we want to do it really well. We want to do it right. We want to do it better. We want, what is the best practice? And it's wild to me. We're 30 years in and all these different efforts. And I still don't think we figured out how to properly showcase the story of a set, whether it's even Martian Machines and Phyrexian, whatever, that was way too fast, right? You did it too fast, guys. You tried to rush into it too much. And so, to go fast, to go slower, it's tough to find that. But either way, we want to talk about some cards in Ixalan that have been previewed over the past week. The set looks really juiced, honestly, and the limited environment looks really strong, and that's pretty cool to me. But we all brought up 3 cards to talk about. The first one here for me is a monster mythic. This is a card that kind of showcases to you how good does a card have to be to not do anything when you play it. If it doesn't do anything, Well, take a look here, and let me get the right one pulled up. At Bonehoard Dracosaur. This is a dinosaur dragon. It is a mythic, and it's a hell of a mythic. It's a 5 mana, 2 red, 3 generic mana for a 5/5 flying first strike. Just those stats. 5/5 flying first strike. You're already doing great things, but we're certainly not done. At the beginning of your upkeep, you exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. If you exiled a land card this way, create a 3/1 red dinosaur creature token. If you exiled a non-land card this way, create a treasure token. So you get the cards to play them. You also get all of the bonuses for what you revealed. That's how nutty this card has to be to basically draw you free cards and or make you mana and or make you creatures to just get it back to your turn.
Like, here's the first thing with this card. Anybody who's it dies to Doomblade, like, you can go suck rocks. Like, creatures are going to do creature things. Creatures are going to die. Right. We play with creatures now. They still win games of Magic. So shut up about that. Like, this card is good. I don't care what anybody says. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a real card. And it's a dragon. It's a dinosaur. So, like, it's going to be sought after for multiple different people's commander decks. Oh, yeah. It works with random stuff like Pia that wants you to play stuff from exile or whatever.
Right.
And already is in one half of her colors. So, like, there's a bunch of random things you're going to be able to do with this. And if nothing else, it's a finisher on its own. Like, your opponent sweeps the board. You're like, great, slap this down, start building an army every turn. Right. And it also first strike blocks one of the most problematic cards in the format, which is Shieldred.
Yeah. I mean, card's insane. You know, I man, to say that I have to see it to believe it feels so bad. Because
today's age,
you can't ask anything more out of a creature than this.
It's drawing you 2 cards a turn.
This is the Baneslayer Dragon or the Baneslayer Angel. Right. I'll call it Baneslayer Dragon.
Baneslayer Dragon. Absolutely.
You untap with this card. That's it.
You're like, look, Shieldred dies to removal too.
Right.
That ain't stopping much. Like, you know, plenty of 5 damage things out there. And so, yeah, this will hit by some of that, what's the collateral damage.
Think about it. We still have decks that play like Ao the Dawn Sky or whatever, right? Like,
well, that's the trick with like cards like Junji and Ao, which is they did do something when they died, so at least you got some value.
But a lot of times it's because they're just sitting there being in the way a lot of the time.
Right, that's true.
You know, like this is going to not just sit in the way, it's going to make other things that get in the way.
Right, and it's going to just keep drawing you cards, quote unquote, while triggering other things that care about that stuff, while making you mana. Like, holy God, the card is nuts. And I'm excited to play with that one. Next one is just, I mean, bananas. Ojer Talk, I believe that's how you say that, or Ojer.
Yeah,
Ojer Talk.
I'm with you on it.
Deepest Foundation is 2 white, 4 generic mana, 6 mana total for a 6/6 mythic legendary god with vigilance. And if 1 or more creature tokens would be created under your control, 3 times that many are created instead. That's all you needed this thing to do, but we're nowhere near done, because if it dies, you return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed under its owner's control as Temple of Civilization, which taps to add a white mana or 2 generic and a white tapped colon, transform it, activate only if you attack with 3 or more creatures this turn and only as a sorcery. So it keeps coming back. God help us all. I've got the sweet showcase version up on the screen now because it's beautiful and wonderful, as well as the back half, which is great. And I don't know if anything else has been specifically engineered to be an absolute mega super bomb that's going to sell all the packs and be worth all the money. But we are now in a 3 times. We're no longer in a twice as many world. We're in a 3 times as many world.
Yeah, are you ready to do some algebra?
Oh, God.
Like, what if you play Mondrak?
Oh, Jesus.
And then play that guy.
I don't want to do
that. No, Mondrak into what? Elish Norn into this girl into raise the alarm. Oh my God,
yeah, Jesus, I don't even Christ. Know. With rabble rousing.
Like, it's wild. It's crazy and it's wild and I love it. I think it's nuts.
I think that this is the kind of over the top ridiculousness that Commander is built on and this feels very Nyx Bloom ancient-y, where I can't imagine a scenario where I play this in standard. I don't think. but it's going to be everywhere in Commander.
Oh,
I
yeah.
will say this: if I'm playing some type of token-based build, I might play one of.
It's also a 6/6 for 6 that can't be killed. Like
late game, if I top deck it, it's like, all right, cool. Here's a 6/6 body that might have an upside. Otherwise, just gonna smack you for 6. You know, so I'm okay playing a one of in 60 card Magic. But yeah, it's gonna make the cut in a lot of Commander.
And it also doesn't die. Like.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's not dying anytime soon.
Yeah, it sticks around. It's ridiculous and crazy and wild. And certainly in honor of one of my absolute favorite movies of all time, The Emperor's New Groove, I had to bring up my third and final card here. Let's see if I can get it on the screen for you guys. And that would be Restless Prarie. And if you have not noticed what it looks like there with that land the certain way and that circle in the middle that is a llama head showing.
Llama.
It is a rare land. Restless Prarie enters the battlefield tapped. It taps to add a green or a white, and for 2 colorless or 2 generic green-white colon, it becomes a 3/3 green and white llama creature until end of turn. It's still a land. And whenever it attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So this card is fantastic and bonanners. And when your mana base attacks, that's always a great thing in Constructed. And it's a llama. You're attacking with you're making your land a llama. And that's wonderful. I don't know how else to say that.
This is the first llama in Magic, I believe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because we have camels, we don't have llamas.
That's incredible.
This is continuing the cycle from Wilds of Eldraine of the restless creature lands. I believe we got the enemy ones in Wilds.
Right.
I assume we're going to get a full cycle of allied restless lands here in Ixalan.
And I will tell you, this is big because of just like you said, the indicator that we're completing this cycle. Because there was a chance we just weren't, right? But this does change the card of 60 card standard for sure. Because there are some of those matchups right now where you're talking about maybe some of the Gruul aggro decks or the green-white tokens or whatever that are just a hair short sometimes when you're trying to compete with, I don't know, the 6 different types of sweepers that everybody's playing right now, and most of them exile stuff or whatever.
Right.
So like having lands that are going to be around to let you get those last 4 points, 6 points of damage is actually really big. It's one of the reasons that Golgari is still very popular. People's like, you have the best creature land right now, and it also lets you gain life effectively. But having this in every color, I think, is going to really change things quite a bit.
Yeah, every pair, absolutely. So so this card I think is great. It also, like, for me, I feel like they're pushing, not super hard, but they are pushing the creature lands, I would argue, in that they are sort of better, more utilitarian, and more useful than they were in the previous ones that they'd made. I know back in the World Wake days, they were very much afraid of, like, oh my God, we made these too good, and they kind of warped formats or whatever. Whereas nowadays, like, you know what I mean? I feel like it's they don't care, whatever. Like, this is going to be great in your green-white commander deck, isn't it? Like, they're not worried as much about Pro Tour tables as they're like, man, you know, kitchen tables are going to love this.
Right, it wouldn't even matter right now. The removal is so good now in Standard, and we're going to have 3 years worth. Like, I mean, like, it's hard to hold a creature right now.
You are correct. So, Reuben, go ahead and talk about your first card.
I'm a simple man. All I want is a 2-mana creature that lets me sacrifice another creature. I don't care what the rest of the ability does. If it said sacrifice a creature, do nothing, I would play it. Which is why I'm very excited that for the first time in a long time, we get a 2-mana creature that for no mana and no additional retail cost, we get to sacrifice a creature. And that is Bartolome del Presidio. Benicio del Toro is a 2/1 legendary creature for a white and a black. Vampire Knight. Both are very relevant creature types. Bartolome says sacrifice another creature or artifact. Put a +1/+1 counter on Bartolome del Presidio. 2/1 is, you know, that you could get picked off, but sacrifice any other creature or artifact is a huge deal. This set is going to have a lot of tokens of various kinds, including artifact tokens. You know, you can already sacrifice your treasures, for example,
and your blood,
and your blood tokens for sure. You know, 2 very relevant creature types coming down early. the last time we had a black-white creature that did this, it won a Pro Tour with Cartel Aristocrat. 2 mana cards that do this are usually at least good, much less if they're this pushed. So I think this card is all but guaranteed to be captaining a good black-white tokens probably deck.
Yeah, vampires are in these colors, likely to have some number of tokens if we're anything close to the last Ixalan. So wouldn't be surprised there. And it's also becomes a type of card that if you are attacking with 5 things, 6 things, this becomes a thing that has to be blocked every time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, just like, all right, sacking the rest of the board, take 8, or whatever.
There's a whole like descend mechanic where stuff is going to the graveyard or certain things have to happen, which this is great. One of the things I also want to note here, when I read the title of this card, I was like, oh, they put up the Spanish version. I need to go read, what the translation is. Right. I was like, oh man, this is actually the English version. That's awesome. I love that. Bartolome del Presidio is an actual Magic card in English. That is super cool. Yeah. And it's just sort of another nod to them like really delving into the culture and not kind of like dumbing it down or whitewashing or whatever. Like there's like, this is what this character is. This is his name. Deal with it. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm into it.
And what's your third card, Reuben? Or second card, Reuben?
Second card. My second card looks, I think, like an innocuous common. However, once again, I'm a simple man. All I want is a 1 mana card that makes 2 permanents. If you're a 1 mana card that makes 2 permanents, I think you're going to be good in Standard. And Spyglass Siren is a 1 mana card that makes 2 permanents. And not only that, it's got some other interesting benefits as well. Ooh. So it's 1 blue mana for this is an uncommon 1/1 flying Siren Pirate. And when she enters the battlefield, create a map token, which is a new type of token we have. That says pay a colorless tap and sacrifice it. Target creature you control explores, activate only as a sorcery. So Spyglass Tyrant, first of all, 1/1 flyer. Awesome. We get an artifact. We get a non-creature token. So that'll stick around if the case of any board sweepers. This is an artifact that we can then feed to our Bartolome, that we can, put in our artifact-centric kind of deck, in addition to being a pirate, a very relevant creature type as well. We got the Admiral is coming back. We got breaches in this set. There's lots of reasons to love a 1/1 flying pirate.
And if you just use the map token on itself, that's okay. For those who don't remember what Exploring did, Explore says you look at the top card of your library, I think, or do you reveal the top card of your library? If it's a land, you put it in your hand. If it's not a land, you can put it on top or back on bottom and put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. And so you're just getting the value either way, no matter what happens. And now they just kind of melded it all into a really sweet token. And I love the idea of map tokens. Those are really cool.
Yeah, flying men just keep getting better. I mean, that's basically what it is, right? Like just another 1/1 for 1 flyer in blue that comes with an ability attached.
Yeah. And very easy for this to be a 2/2 flyer on turn 2. Yeah. Like you go turn 1, this card, turn 2, play another one, explore, attack for 2 in the air. That's a quick clock.
Like I came to Magic and started covering Magic at a time in which I brought up to a Wizards R&D developer at one point. And I was like, man, can we not reprint Flying Men? And they like scoffed at the power level. They were like, you can't have a 1 mana 1/1 flyer. That's crazy. That's way too high on the curve. It's ridiculous. Reuben, tell us about your last card.
We get a cycle in this set. We actually get a new land type in this set, and it's called Cave. And caves are going to be relevant to the story of the lost caverns of Ixalan, spoiler alert. But the cave land type is a thing, and we're getting a cycle of hidden caves, and I chose the green one. Hidden Nursery comes into play tapped, and taps to add a green. And you can pay 5 mana, tap and sacrifice it to discover 4. Activate only as a sorcery. You can exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card with mana cost 4 or less, cast it without paying its mana cost, or put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This one in particular, I think green in particular can take advantage of these. There's almost certainly going to be an explosive vegetation that lets you search for caves. I think that late game, when you're mana flooded, being able to turn your lands into spells is always good. The Horizon Canopy effect, anytime a land can cast a spell like a Windbrisk Heights or something like that, it's good. And by the way, this is a common.
Yeah, this is in your land slot. Yeah,
this is in your land slot. You're going to see millions of these in every draft. I think it's going to make the limited environment significantly more interesting. And yeah, I just think these are great.
Do have to play it as a sorcery. That's kind of the only real downside for me. But yeah, even there could even be builds that incorporate this. Where you're talking about in standard right now with the like domain control decks, because of Beanstalks, they're playing a lot of things that cost more than 4. So if you want to hit certain cards, you could play those at 4 or less with your hidden nursery and take advantage of that too, which could be kind of cool. So there are some ways you could build with this and really integrate it, I think.
Well, I'm also curious. We haven't actually spoken to the fact that the mechanic itself basically replaces Cascade. The idea of Discover is Cascade, instead of being less mana, rather it's equal to or less. And was that really an issue? I was not unhappy with Cascade just being less, honestly.
Well, yeah,
but the thing is, like, Cascade feels a little bit different because of just attached to the card, whereas most of the stuff I've seen with Discover have something you do while it's in play or whatever, and then Discover happens.
Like trigger it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, Cascade is a cast trigger.
Yeah.
And Discover can also be modulated. Like, we have a 4-cost 3/2 in this set.
Right.
That instead of doing what Bloodbraid Elf does and cascading, it discovers 3, which is under control and reasonable, as opposed to Bloodbraid Elf maybe.
Yeah, so it's just sort of, it's a very different flavor from Cascade. It's just kind of weird. It's almost like a better Cascade in many ways, because again, you're getting that extra mana, worth, and it's just as rare or random rather. But regardless, I love the idea that they can give us lands that a little bit of a drawback up front, certainly on turn 1 or whatever, but on turn 12, man, these are like the coolest lands ever, and I love the hell out of that. PowrDragn, what's your first card?
All right, I did have an honorable mention of the Poison Dart Frog, just because that artwork is so awesome.
So
and
cute.
It's a random dumb creature that can kill Atraxa, which is great.
Ooh, yeah.
But my first one is Ghalta Stampede Tyrant. Like, I don't know how I'd not be able to talk about this card. 8 mana for a 12/12, which I guess technically on rate is fine, since you're only paying 8 for a 12/12. That also tramples for a legendary dinosaur. But when it enters the battlefield, put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Like, the fact that they made this an ETB trigger over a cast trigger
is crazy,
is nuts. Like, so many ways you could abuse this with a billion different reanimator effects right now. Like, just ramping it into play and then emptying the rest of your hand. Like, so many just quirky things you can do with this, that this card is definitely going to have people looking for it for sure.
Yep. This is the timmiest card.
This is the timmiest card that's ever timmed in my life. It's insane. Like,
great.
You can't. Everything about this is amazing. Like, as a Timmy Spike, this is just it. Every single button. It's huge, but you can still sneak it into play. It has a really cool ability that doesn't make you jump through a weird hoop. It just says, "Put me on the battlefield, coach, and let me just go completely nuts and wreck everyone's day."
Oh,
that's what she does.
And even if your hand's nearly empty, it's a 12/12 with trample. So it's not even like they're just going to chump block it. Like, they're going to have to put the team in front of this thing.
Right. Well, you get to put the team down behind her because you snuck her into play and you just dropped your whole hand. And the things like there's just, this thing's already pre-ordered for like $25. Yet another giganto mythic, yet another killer design for commander decks all over the world.
Rare and mythic dinosaurs continually sell.
They go nuts.
This is going to sell till the end of time.
Yeah, this is going to be Praetorhoof level type, always going to be worth it. Probably going to reach the $40, $50 level at one point, and they're going to put in every Commander Masters from here until whenever. This card's nuts. What you got next?
All right. Well, this one is about doing some algebra, as I joked about earlier, but Sovereign Okenic Ahau. Like, that's a crazy name, but it's a 4 mana 3/4 cat noble with Ward 2, which I do like because it makes it harder to kill, so you can set up what you're trying to set up with this.
Right.
But whenever it attacks, for each creature you control with power greater than that creature's base power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on that creature equal to the difference. Now, that reads very weird, but it's very specific. What it's basically saying is, for each creature that attacks, or when this attacks, for each creature you have, if the power is greater than its base power, you get to take that difference and put that number of counters on it. So if you have a 2/2 that has something giving it a +1, you'll get an extra token on it. So basically, you'll be doubling the difference every turn from then on, whenever this creature attacks. Or if it's carrying a sword, as an example, it might be +2 from the sword. So it's a 2/2 plus the sword, making it 4. You will put 2 counters on it because that's the difference.
It read really weird. Yeah, that's really
it has to be worded a very specific way. It took me a few times. I had to read through it like 2 or 3 times to kind of understand this.
Huh.
But it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's actually, until you literally explained it right now, I was still wondering how this thing worked.
Yeah, but if you're playing this in a deck that plays +1/+1 counters of any kind, this thing goes nuts. Like the first time you attack with it.
Right. If you giant growth, if you giant growth a creature and attack, then you put 3 +1/+1 counters on it because you give it 3 of its standing power, which is awesome.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna go right into the
bonkers.
Gonna go right into that. What's the Arash? I think it's the cat Eminence commander.
Yeah, and it's also a cat. So like people are gonna like that for their commander decks too.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that card's sweet. What's your last card?
My last card is a fun one, Abuelo Ancestral Echo, which is funny because Abuelo is like your elders, your grandparents or whatever in Spanish, which is also very cool. But a 3-mana 2/2 spirit, flying ward 2, also again hard to kill. But you can pay a white to blue and a colorless to exile another target creature artifact you control, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. These cards are always good, right? Mm-hmm. You can just blink something, get an ability, you can flip your prototype creatures, you can trigger ETB stuff, you can rescue something from a removal, and you can do it multiple times if you have the mana, and it doesn't have a timing restriction on it. Like, this card's going to be very fun to play with. And if you have 2 of them, they can then protect each other.
Yeah. If you love Blinking Spirit, Evan, you're going to love this Blinking Spirit. If you had asked college-age Reuben if there was any card that wasn't legendary that I would have as a commander, I would have picked Mist Meadow Witch. So now I get a Mist Meadow Witch commander. I mean, I'm on board 100%.
You know, one of the things that I actually appreciate about this in terms of the design of it, which is Ward is an incredible mechanic. Ward was a very important piece, a brand new knob that they could turn on every creature here and out and say, like, it's a 3-mana 2/2 flyer and it's hard to cast, but we made it harder for them to get rid of it, and that is important. And that additional little knob to turn allows them to continue to tweak creatures and make creatures more interesting and better and hard to deal with, and make just more different scenarios to come up. Because if that ward wasn't there, if this card had ward off of it, we wouldn't even talk about it, I don't think, because it'd be too easy to kill, be too hard to play. But you're like, wait,
shocked every time.
Yeah, I'd be like, wait, they really have to, they have to use all their mana to kill this thing, or they have to do something weird and have it not be countered or whatever. Like, that's stuff that you need now, and I love that. I think that's really cool. All right, so we're not done with the new stuff, okay? We're not done. You think we're done? We are absolutely not done. Now, this next little bit I think is awesome. A few reasons. One, they gave a first look at Fallout. Yes, it comes out in March, but what used to happen many, many years ago, and the long, long ago, was the distributors would all fly up to Wizards and they'd show them a special PowerPoint presentation, which is basically what you saw with this magical first look. And it got them interested in the set because they have to place those orders early and the printers have to get ready for whatever the size of the orders are and blah, blah, blah. Well, we get that stuff now, and I think that's great. The second factor for me is that, like, I've got a son who does not like Magic. He doesn't care about Magic. And I'm like, I want him to, but I can't make the boy or whatever. But he loves some Fallout, and he wants me to get these decks so we can learn how to play Magic, so he can play with his favorite Fallout characters. That is a win. And so let's go ahead and bring up here the first look at Fallout, available March 8th, 2024. Yes, it's going to be a while, but I don't care. We got a dog meat card, which is amazing. We have a brand new token card of Junk, which is also fantastic. And I won't read out all of these things and whatnot, but I definitely wanted to cover the fact that they gave us a bunch of cards. I love the way that radiation works. I think rads,
rads are very cool. They're
cool. Rad,
in fact.
Which is neat. They include a bunch of characters from like all over the universe. Like, I think this Cesar guy is like from New Vegas or something. So different versions of Fallout, as well as the Gary clone, because there was one vault which famously had all Garys in it. And if you don't know about Fallout, there's a bunch, there's the end of the world, and everybody was stuck in vaults, and all these different vaults have different weird things about them. Like sometimes they're weird experiments, and sometimes they're just vanilla. But this one has all Garys, and you can make Garys. Squad comes back as a mechanic, which is great. You have Dr. Madison Leaves in multiple Fallout games, and Energy comes back. Check that out. In Energy, I mean, I didn't expect to see it. It's been, how long since we've seen an Energy card? Like 8 years or something?
Yeah.
But there's a place for it. It would be Fallout.
It would definitely be Fallout. I love this. Yeah. And because it's not in constructed, it's not in standard, they don't have, if they got a number wrong or didn't tweak something just the right way, who cares? You're having fun with your Fallout deck, which is great. And Rex Cyberhound, where he has to get multiple brains, and that's the thing that you could do in the game, is to give him a brain, which gives him abilities. I love it. And the fact that you have these super cool showcase versions, which looks like you're looking at it through a Pip-Boy, which is great. The fact that the set code is Pip. The set code is Pip, y'all. And the set, the set symbol is the Pip-Boy head. Come on. That's the thumbs beautiful. Up. Just
like the arcane signet with the thumbs up, and it's great.
Oh,
it's
yeah. If you haven't seen it, we got it on screen here. The arcane signet with the Vault Boy reprints. Crucible of Worlds. My son got to explain to me what a Gek was, because I didn't know what the hell that was.
Sure.
But that's what they used to restart the land to prosper. Well, in Crucible of Worlds, you're playing the lands again. I think that's brilliant. This Wonderful. Soul Ring is just, I can't get over how amazing the Soul Ring is. I freaking love it. I love the Wasteland. This is pulling in people back. I don't care if, you didn't care about Doctor Who, or you didn't like this, you didn't care about Warhammer. Fallout's got some pull too, and I think this is brilliant.
Yeah, really cool. I've never played Fallout myself, but I've watched friends of mine play it, and it seems like the kind of game I'd enjoy. The fact that, again, they seem to be killing it with these Universes Beyond cards of they have people who are really passionate about the thing in charge of the thing. It seems like they come into the office, and instead of saying you're in charge of Magic, you get to be in charge of this thing, they go, which of you is the super fan?
Right.
You get to be in charge of the thing, which I think is amazing for such a big company. You don't see that kind of delegation at big companies. And yet they're doing it with this, and with hopefully, I mean, I assume they'll do it with Marvel. They did it with Doctor Who. They're doing it with all of the things, and it's great. We're also going to get Radstorm, which is Storm Proliferate, which is another of my favorite things. Which is they just put 2 keywords on a card and called it a day.
Fantastic.
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's a cool set. I think it's checking the right boxes. Kind of makes me wonder, after seeing all of these Universes Beyond products, is how much are they working with the studios themselves? Saying, hey, give us the list of maybe 15 characters and 10 or 15 key beats of your game we have to include, or whatever, to make sure we don't miss something, right? And it seems like they're not missing. So, this is another one that I think
they're killing it.
The box for super fans.
Right. And the last card here that they show, one of the last cards, is the bobbleheads. That's a thing you would collect in Fallout games. You'd find them all over the world in different little places. And, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control is a thing. And I'm sure all of them have this type of formatting. They're making them serialized versions, which is cool. But just to show my son Alpha Deathclaw, and him going oh yeah, that's what Alpha Deathclaw does. He crushes stuff when he shows up and gets even scarier later. And I'm like, yes, that is awesome. I love that. The Nuka-Cola vending machine, just fan freaking tastic. Cool. And when the Radstorm special version, the collector's edition version, just has 2 words on it. Come on. When have you seen a Magic card with just 2 words on it? It's so rare, and I love it.
I think that we had 2 in the Doctor Who set, and there were 2 that existed before that. This will be the 5th one.
Oh my God, I love it.
Which is great.
Much. And it's great because I got to sit there and I'll be like, son, what the hell does Vault 101 birthday party mean? I don't know what that means. And he was explaining to me how in the game and it works, and what Vault 101 was, and yada yada. I just think that's awesome. Love it. It's brilliant. Yes, it's one of the million different things we get to talk about this week, but it's been a hell of a week to be a Magic player. One of the things I wanted to bring up here before we move on, And this isn't about some of the new stuff, even though it is. It's the new stuff for Arena. This is one of those. This is one of the things you could easily just kind of sweep over because there's so much going on, and there's events, and there's new products, and there's announcements, and blah blah blah. Ladies and gentlemen, I've played Arena, the Arena client, since 2018. Like, this is the 5-year anniversary stuff. Okay. It took them 5 years, but we can now favorite our styles. I know that's weird, a little strange, but the fact that you can go in and say, I want to use a certain style of a card, they fixed it with lands. Previously, you could go in and pick your favorite lands. Great. But this was still an issue. I would actively not finish my mastery trees because the client would only use your most recent special showcase version. So if I never got the extended art version from the mastery tree, I could still use the sweet showcase version I got from the event or whatever. And that drove me insane. And then I would feel like I screwed up when I did accidentally open the mastery tree version, because then I had to go and change it every single time I built a deck. This is something that annoyed me for absolute years. It came out in the same week they announced Marvel. So like, damn it. I couldn't express how much I love this because I've wanted it for so long.
Well, you can.
Man.
It just is during Desperate Ravens. I think that this is great stuff. I think that anytime that I don't see anything bad.
No, it's great.
All of the things I'm reading about here, I'm on board with. There's nothing that's like home run. Like, I'm so excited. Right. But sometimes you just got to hit for average, man. And like, there's nothing bad here.
God, it's great.
Get those singles and get on base.
That's right.
That's it.
This is a quality of life I have begged for and asked for and hoped for, and it's just it's finally here in the midst of the hurricane of news. Whatever. All right. So
by the way, I know that we have in our audience, we have a bunch of Magic content creators. Mm-hmm. This link that I believe is going to be in the show notes, ? Probably should be now that I've said so.
Sure.
Has the information of how to join the streamer event.
Sure.
So if you are a content creator and we're like, I don't know how to do the streamer event, I don't have a friend who will let me in the back door. This website tells you how to enter the streamer event, be a part of that. And you can join us, for example.
Yeah, and we certainly will be doing the streamer event when that comes around, and it's always a good time, super fun and exciting. And again, I just think the quality of life that took 5 years to get here, super ironic it showed up when it did. All right, so the last thing here for Desperate Ravens, there was some interesting conversation about the idea that Wizards is basically reprinting and devaluing their older Magic cards by printing them so much. One of the examples being Doubling Seasons being printed like 3 times in a row. It's almost guaranteed to be reprinted a 4th time in Ravnica Remastered. And so, how do we feel about that? Is that devaluing collections? But at the same time, I would argue A, secret layers are very reserved list like, and B, we're literally talking about brand new cards that are going to be worth bajillions because they're so crazy and impactful and huge. And so I don't think it's quite as clear cut as they're necessarily trying to devalue everything versus like, doesn't everyone complain about like how expensive X is or Y is? And they're trying to reprint it now to get it towards a reasonable level, whatever that's supposed to be. I don't know. I think it's okay.
I was saying this when I was even at Wizards, is explaining that players both want the game to be cheap and cards to be affordable, and they also want their stuff to be available for sale at a reasonable price when they're ready to get rid of it.
Right.
And it's very hard to have both of those things.
Right.
Now, I do think some of the stuff Wizards has done as far as making like serialized cards, collectible versions, secret layers, whatever, like at least leaves an avenue for those things to exist. Mm-hmm. But you shouldn't be relying on your regular versions of anything to hold long-term value at this point. Like, we've seen the pattern. We know what it is. And truthfully, even the stuff that is, you kind of, again, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, you got to have an exit strategy. This isn't just grab a thing and sit on it for 10 years anymore. It's grab a thing, see it get near its peak and be like, okay, cool, I'm getting out before the reprint in 18 months, 24 months, whatever it is, right?
Right.
It's just a different world. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, if you were expecting to like, I'm going to buy a case of every Magic set and just put it in the closet, well, you may only be making 5%.
Right.
Right. Like
Yeah.
that's just the way it's going to be.
Keep
Right.
up with inflation.
You're not
So
doubling your value like you were before every 4 or 5 years.
Right.
exactly. I think that there's a couple things at play here. One, so I'm going to start with an analogy. Please stick with me. When you have a hot air balloon, you need to manage the ballast that keeps you down close to the earth and the lift, which brings you back up into the air. Similarly, in Magic, you need to balance printing the new cards while maintaining the value of the old cards. That changes over time. That'll change with air pressure and temperature and all of the various other crazy things that have to do with the economy of Magic the Gathering. And I think that Magic has always done a remarkable job maintaining its own ecosystem. Less so in the last 5 years, but it's always done it. And ever since the beginning, I gave a PowerPoint presentation as part of a Twitch show about how Magic the Gathering is really the only game and maybe the only collectible that has developed its own sustainable economy, avoiding becoming a fad and planned for the long term. And they did that in the mid-90s by inventing standard and tempering reprints and stuff like that. And the much maligned Chronicles was a part of that experiment. And you can't have it both ways. You don't get to complain about all of my cards are being devalued and also all the cards are expensive. Like you can complain because you're a Magic player and you're also a person.
Right.
You're allowed to complain about whatever. But then I get to call you a hypocrite when you complain about one thing and then not the other thing. So, it is hard. And I understand that that's hard. What you should do with Magic, and this is my financial recommendation, you should do one of two things. Either you should invest in things that are on the reserve list, right? Things that won't be reprinted, things that are like the One Ring, which are very hard to reprint.
Or things like old foils, right? They're not making more of those. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Things that are hard to reprint with like proper nouns or things that are very old. If you're not going to do that, then you need to do the Wall Street, like Chad thing of short-term trading, of buying a stock, waiting until it goes up 5% and then immediately selling it.
Pick it and flip it.
What was that?
Pick it and flip it.
Pick it and flip it. Wait till something drops 10%, buy it, and then flip it when it goes back up to normal, right? But that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of paying attention to the markets and a lot of hedging and a lot of, clicking buttons. And that's how those Wall Street guys make a bunch of money, is they wait until a stock drops a little bit, picks it up at that little bit of low point, then sells it 5 minutes later. And that's what you're going to have to do with Magic now.
I think if you're still getting the most rare versions of things, where we're talking about the weird collector booster, super rare, Liliana, whatever's, right? Like those are still going to have long-term value.
Yep.
But you have to be getting those level of cards now. Like you can't just open booster and be like, oh, I got this mythic that's like $10. So like, that's great. It's probably going to be $5 in a matter of a couple months, right? Like that's just how it is.
Right. And so, you look at Dominaria Remastered, we talked about a little bit in the pre-show, which is they juiced that set. They juiced the crap out of it. They put, Force of Will in it and Friends, and it's still selling like at very, very low prices. You know what I mean? Like at very, very close to cost prices still right now in October 2023. And so there's going to be Ravnica Remastered showing up early next year. And I think between Dominaria Remastered basically didn't hold its value, its high value. Commander Masters was a gigantic disaster and just completely demolished a lot of stores, which was unfortunate. And so you got another product here, with Ravnica going I don't know how many stores are really going to buy into it anyway, because they got burnt so bad with the other higher cost sets this year, where if your standard set is including doubling season and every standard set has this magical bonus sheet and, special guests or whatever they want to call it, so they can jam in the expensive cards in there too, go all in on the standard sets, because the more expensive sets have just been biting people in the butt over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think there'll be some cards that are worth picking up, depending on, however it's curated or whatever. And there'll probably be some that get throwback borders and, whatever. They'll do that whole thing. And some of those will hold long-term value to some extent. I don't think they'll stay at their peak value. But that's the stuff you're going to have to look for. I can't imagine any of the regular rares and mythics being worth it because it's a whole reprint set. Like,
exactly.
They can only be so expensive, and they're not going to be more expensive than the current versions that exist. So, like, going into stuff like that with that mindset doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it's just it's weird, and you know we've just sort of come to the point where like we know that Wizards tries to sell these more expensive sets, but unless they're a sort of a Modern Horizons, new designs and or really great reprints that people are waiting on, you're just not seeing the value come out of the other side of it.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting. Let's move on here. Turn the corner to the finisher. The most ambitious crossover in history. Hardly. The real multiverse of madness is Magic cards. So tell me, what is the card from a universe beyond that you're most looking forward to coming to the Gathering, Reuben?
Well, as Cardboard Crack foretold many years ago, I'm looking forward to Iron Man coming to Magic within the next couple of years, partly because he's iconic, but more so because I'm really excited to see the TMZ video someday of a terribly confused Robert Downey Jr. getting presented with a Magic card to sign. It's just a funny mental image.
Yeah.
Weird thing. PowrDragn?
To be honest, I'm actually pretty excited about all the Fallout stuff we've seen so far, but I'm looking forward to some number of sleeps I'm going to have between now for the next 3 to 6 months, and then just waking up and being impressed all over again with Fallout as it's closer to release.
Woo, let's go. Now, I love Jurassic Park cards that are on their way. We didn't get to talk about them tonight, but for real, I actually think they're really, really sweet. But I must say that I'm not looking forward to any more cards that come out after the initial release because we all know how bad Jurassic Park 2 was.
Yeah.
Wasn't good.
Not good.
Had that whole mess around the bar and gymnastics killing the
what Jurassic Park card I would love to have?
What's that?
Something that's just like evocative of that stupid ball they had to roll down the hill in the recent Jurassic Park. We're not going to get it. We're not going to get it.
That'll be a silly vehicle for sure. Well, that ends another live episode of Magic Mics. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. Thank you, PowrDragn.
Hey, as always, good to be here. Don't forget to leave those comments, leave us a review. We love you, and I'll still be your friend.
There you go. Thank you, Reuben.
Be my friend?
Yours, buddy.
So kind.
Yours.
Hey, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. I'm going to move on here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, my co-host, PowrDragn, Reuben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online on our Discord, twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.